The central core suddenly flared to life, the swirling mass of energy expanding outward in all directions. Shaw and his team instinctively stepped back, but the Ark wasn't hostile. Instead, it was offering them power, the means to fight back. The energy spread throughout the facility, wiring itself into their suits, into their weapons. Humanity had unlocked something, an opportunity, a moment of hope. "We have it," Dr. Mercer said, her voice tinged with disbelief. "The Ark has given us control. It's syncing with our systems." But before Shaw could respond, the facility trembled again, this time more violently. The walls shook and the lights flickered. A distant rumble echoed from above. The alien fleet was advancing. They were coming for the Ark. "This is it," Shaw said, his voice calm but filled with urgency. "We've got one shot at this. The Ark has given us the power. Now we fight back. Together." With the Ark now syncing with their technology, the team prepared for the final battle. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for their future, for the future of every human being left on Earth. The aliens had underestimated humanity, and now they would see exactly what that mistake would cost them. Dr. Mercer turned to Shaw, her face pale but filled with determination. "The Ark, it's showing us a way in. I think it wants us to connect with it. If we can interface with its core directly, we might be able to control its systems. If we can take control of the Ark, we might just have a chance." Shaw nodded. "Then let's do it. But stay alert. This isn't over. Whatever's waiting for us on the other side, it's not going to be easy." The team moved forward cautiously, but as they crossed the threshold into the core chamber, they were met with an unexpected sight. The room was vast, far larger than they had anticipated, and its walls shimmered with an otherworldly glow. At the center of the room stood a massive structure, a swirling mass of energy and machinery, pulsing with life. It was as if the Ark itself was alive, a living being with its own consciousness. As Dr. Mercer moved to the central console, the atmosphere grew thick with tension. Every step felt heavy, as if the Ark was watching them, judging them. The central core hummed louder, and Shaw felt a strange connection form between them and the machine, an unspoken understanding, like the Ark was aware of their every move. "You are closer than ever." The voice of the Ark boomed again, though this time it was softer, almost reverent. "But do you truly understand what you are asking?" Shaw felt a chill run down his spine. "We understand enough to know that we can't lose," he said firmly. "We can't let you fall into the hands of the aliens. You have to help us." The Ark responded with a deep, resonating hum. The energy within the core intensified, causing the air around them to crackle with power. The tendrils that had once sought to tear them apart now seemed to pulse in rhythm with the Ark's heartbeat, like the entire facility was becoming one cohesive entity. Dr. Mercer, who had been studying the central console, now seemed to be communicating with the Ark directly, her fingers flying across the interface. "I think it's asking us to prove ourselves," she said. "It wants to know why we're fighting, what makes us worthy." Shaw stared at the glowing core, his mind racing. They had no time for debates. He was ready to fight, to risk everything for the future of humanity. But as the Ark's voice reverberated through the chamber once more, he realized something. This was no ordinary machine. This was a being, a force of intelligence and power. And it wasn't just going to hand over control to anyone. They had to prove themselves worthy of its power. The Ark's voice was low and almost mournful. "You fight for your survival, but do you understand the cost? The fate of your people hangs in the balance, and yet you remain driven by one simple truth. You want to live." Shaw took a deep breath, his mind clearing. "Yes," he said simply, "we fight to survive. We fight to protect our future. We fight because that's what humans do. No matter how many times we're knocked down, we get back up." The Ark paused, as if considering his words. The energy in the room shifted, becoming more intense, more focused. Shaw's team stood motionless, waiting for the Ark's decision. "Very well," the voice finally said. "You may have your chance. But know this. This will not be an easy victory. The war is not won through force alone. It is won through unity, through purpose, through the strength of your will." As the Ark's words echoed through the chamber, Shaw felt a sudden rush of warmth, as if the machine were acknowledging him, understanding his resolve. He could feel it now. He wasn't just standing in front of a machine. He was facing an intelligence, something far older and far more advanced than anything humanity had ever encountered. This wasn't just a tool. This was a partner, a reluctant ally that had chosen to recognize humanity's potential. Dr. Mercer stepped forward, her eyes wide as she typed in the final sequence of commands. The Ark systems began to hum louder, the energy at its core swirling into a brilliant light. Shaw felt a connection. The machine was alive, and it was now listening to them, understanding their purpose. Shaw didn't hesitate. "Then let's make it think like us." He motioned to his team. "Prepare for close combat. We're going to use everything we've learned from their technology, and we're going to turn it against them." The team moved with purpose. Shaw had no illusions about the Ark's power, but he had seen humanity's greatest strength time and time again. The ability to adapt, to improvise, to survive against all odds. It was this same adaptability that would give them a fighting chance. "Think like them," Shaw repeated, his voice low but filled with determination. "If we can't fight them with firepower, we'll fight them with ingenuity." As the team positioned themselves to make one final push toward the Ark's core, Dr. Mercer spoke up again. "There's a way," she said, her voice steady. "The Ark has to choose. It's not just a machine. It's an intelligence. We have to make it see us as allies, not enemies." Shaw felt a strange sense of hope stir within him. If the Ark was truly a living being, then it could understand them. It could feel the desperation, the will to survive. And in that moment, Shaw made a decision. They would not simply take control of the Ark. They would appeal to it. They would show it that humanity, despite all its flaws, was worth saving. Dr. Mercer moved quickly, using a device they had developed to interface with the Ark's control systems. As she plugged it into the central console, the walls of the room shifted, and the tendrils paused. There was a brief moment of stillness, as if the Ark itself was contemplating their next move. Then, without warning, the massive doors to the core chamber opened, revealing a glowing, pulsating mass of energy at its center. The Ark was offering them access, perhaps as a test, or perhaps as a sign that it was truly waiting for humanity's decision. "Now," Shaw said. His voice was firm, but there was an undertone of uncertainty. "We make our stand." With weapons in hand and the last ounce of their strength, Shaw and his team moved toward the core, their minds focused. The tendrils, for the moment, were still. The Ark had allowed them through. But they knew the true test had just begun. Would the Ark accept humanity as its ally, or would it destroy them all in one final act of defiance? As Dr. Mercer placed her hands on the control panel, the core hummed to life, brighter than ever. The voice boomed once again. "You dare challenge the will of the invaders. You are nothing but insects. Your world is already ours." Shaw gritted his teeth. "We may be insects, but we've survived against everything you've thrown at us, and we won't stop fighting now." In that moment, the Ark's systems seemed to freeze, then shift. The once hostile interface now pulsed with strange energy, as if the Ark was considering Shaw's words. The lights flickered, then steadied, and for the first time, the voice that had once spoken of humanity's extinction softened. "You are different," the voice said, its tone now almost contemplative. "You fight for survival, for life. Perhaps you are not the enemy." Shaw didn't know if the Ark had truly made its decision. But the tide was shifting. The Ark's energy surged, and the final countdown had begun. Earth's fate would no longer be determined by the will of the invaders. It was humanity's turn to decide. The war was far from over, but for the first time in months, Shaw felt something he hadn't dared to hope for, the possibility of victory. And with that, the final battle had begun. The Ark's systems hummed with an intensity that vibrated through the very walls of the control room. Shaw's breath came in quick, shallow gasps, his pulse pounding in his ears. The sudden shift in the Ark's behavior, its response to humanity's persistence, was as surprising as it was promising. But even with the glimmer of hope, Shaw knew they were far from out of danger. The alien forces outside Earth's atmosphere were still watching, still waiting for the moment when they could launch their final, decisive strike. "Are you seeing this?" Dr. Mercer said breathlessly, her eyes glued to the glowing control panel in front of her. "The Ark is changing. It's reconfiguring its interface. It's adapting to us." Shaw moved closer, scanning the swirling patterns of light and symbols. The walls had stopped their aggressive movement, the tendrils no longer blocking their path. Instead, the Ark seemed to be offering them access, like it was giving them a chance to prove themselves, to make their case. This wasn't just alien technology. This was something far more complex, far more intelligent. "Whatever it is, it's not doing us any favors," Shaw muttered, glancing over his shoulder. His team was still on edge, weapons raised in case the Ark turned on them again. They had no way of knowing if this was some kind of trap, but they couldn't afford to hesitate. They had come too far to back out now. Shaw's pulse raced. They had to get to the core, but the Ark was closing in on them fast. His team was starting to lose ground, and the alien presence inside the Ark was growing stronger by the second. The facility was collapsing around them, the walls groaning as though the Ark was aware of their every movement. Just as Shaw thought they had no hope, something strange happened. The Ark's systems flickered again, this time in a rapid sequence of lights and sounds. It was like the Ark was resetting itself, or maybe it was trying to communicate. "Hold your fire," Shaw ordered, his instincts telling him to wait. Dr. Mercer's eyes widened. It's responding to us. It's trying to communicate. It's not just alien technology. It's some sort of hybrid intelligence. And it's listening." Shaw glanced at her. "What do you mean, listening?" The console in front of Dr. Mercer suddenly came alive with a series of symbols, more complex than anything they had seen before. As she studied them, her face grew pale. "It's adapting. It's learning from us. We can use that. If we communicate with it, we can control it." Before Shaw could respond, a massive voice erupted from the Ark's speakers again, louder than ever before. "You think you can control this?" Shaw gritted his teeth. "We don't have a choice." The Ark was alive, aware, and now the battle for Earth's future would come down to one final confrontation, one between humanity and the technology that was supposed to save them. With the alien fleet above them, and the Ark transforming into something darker, the team had only one option: to fight, to adapt, and to hope that the Ark would finally choose to side with them in this final desperate battle. The moment the massive voice boomed from the Ark's speakers, Shaw's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't just a command, it was a challenge. The Ark, alive, sentient, and now aware of humanity's presence, was rejecting them. But Shaw refused to give up. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The fate of Earth, the survival of his people, hinged on their ability to control the Ark. "You think you can control this?" The voice echoed again, sending a shiver down Shaw's spine. The room was vibrating with the force of the Ark's energy, the tendrils now growing thicker, more aggressive. They were no longer just obstacles. They were extensions of the Ark itself, defending it from the humans who had dared to awaken it. Shaw's team was under attack. They fired their weapons at the twisting, slashing tendrils, but each shot seemed to be absorbed by the Ark's living walls. The technology they had once hoped would be their salvation was now their greatest threat. "We have no choice but to fight," Shaw muttered to himself, his voice steady despite the chaos. He knew there was no turning back. The Ark had turned against them, But it was also their only chance of surviving the alien invasion. If they couldn't control it, humanity was doomed. Dr. Mercer, her face illuminated by the flashing lights of the control panel, was still frantically trying to decipher the symbols on the screen. The Ark was communicating, yes, but it was doing so in a way they couldn't fully comprehend. It was an intelligence so advanced that their human minds struggled to understand it. "I'm close," Dr. Mercer said breathlessly, her fingers moving rapidly over the interface. "The Ark's systems are trying to adapt to us. It's learning from our actions, from our technology. If I can just connect with it, I can override its core systems." Shaw nodded. "Do it. We don't have much time." But just as Mercer was about to engage the final command, the Ark seemed to respond. A massive tremor shook the entire facility. The tendrils shot forward, blocking their way, and the lights flickered once more. The Ark was shifting, its form twisting and elongating, becoming more alien, more dangerous with every passing second. The voice sounded again, but this time it was colder, filled with a deeper sense of finality. "Your efforts are futile. This world is ours. You will be destroyed." Shaw's blood ran cold. The Ark was more than just a weapon. It was a part of the alien force, a key component in their strategy. But why had it responded to humanity in the first place? Could it truly be turned against them? Or was this all part of the aliens' plan to crush any hope that humanity had left? Shaw's thoughts raced as the Ark's tendrils drew closer. His team was running out of options. They couldn't escape. They couldn't fight their way out. And yet there was still one thing they had, one thing the aliens didn't expect: human resilience. Dr. Mercer, her face pale but determined, turned to Shaw. "The Ark, it's sentient. It doesn't just follow orders. It learns from us. If we can make it see that we're not an enemy, maybe we can convince it to help us. But we have to connect with it on a deeper level. We have to think like it does." The moment the Ark systems came online, the atmosphere in the control room shifted. The low hum that had filled the air grew louder, almost deafening. The walls pulsed with a strange, eerie light, and the floor beneath their feet seemed to vibrate with power. Shaw's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the central core of the Ark come to life. It wasn't just technology. It felt like a living organism, responding to their presence. Dr. Mercer, her face lit by the glowing panels, looked at Shaw with a mixture of awe and concern. It's beyond anything we imagined. This is not just alien technology. It's something else. Something alive." Shaw nodded grimly, trying to focus. Their mission was clear. They needed to harness the Ark's power and use it to stop the alien fleet. But the question remained, who controlled the Ark? Was it them? Or had the aliens somehow anticipated this and left a trap? Shaw didn't have time to find the answers. They were too close now, too close to the only chance humanity had left. The voice that had boomed from the Ark's speakers echoed again, sending a chill down Shaw's spine. "You have come too late. The war ends with your extinction." The words were chillingly final. The aliens had known they were coming, and they had prepared for this moment. Shaw's mind raced. The Ark had activated on its own, and it was clear that the alien force wasn't going to let humanity use it without a fight. "It's a trap," Shaw muttered under his breath. He looked around the room. The team had no way of knowing what would happen next, but they had no choice but to move forward. "We've come this far," he said, his voice steady. "We'll make it work, no matter what." As the team moved closer to the central control console, the walls seemed to close in around them. The Ark systems began to sync with their own devices, and they felt an overwhelming sense of power building in the air. The alien presence in the facility was no longer just a distant threat. It was here, inside the Ark with them. Dr. Mercer worked furiously at the terminal, typing in commands as fast as she could. "I'm unlocking the main system now. If we can access the core, we might be able to turn their weapons against them." Shaw watched her, his mind constantly scanning the room for any sign of danger. The alien ships were still hovering overhead, waiting, watching. They couldn't afford to fail. Then, a loud mechanical roar shook the facility, and the entire control room was plunged into darkness. The hum of the Ark's energy systems ceased, and a cold, oppressive silence filled the room. "What the hell?" Shaw growled, reaching for his weapon. Suddenly, the lights flickered back on, but the Ark was no longer glowing. Instead, it had taken on a cold, metallic sheen, like it was readying itself for something. Something hostile. A deep, guttural voice erupted from the speakers again, this time even more menacing. "You are too late, human. This world is ours. You cannot change fate." The control room doors slammed shut, trapping them inside. Dr. Mercer's fingers flew over the console, trying to regain control of the system, but nothing worked. The Ark's interface was no longer responding to her commands. It was like the facility had become alive in a way that felt completely alien to them. Shaw turned to his team, his jaw clenched. "Get ready," he said, his voice sharp. "We're going to fight our way out of here." The team moved into position, their weapons raised. They had no idea what they were up against, but they knew one thing for sure. The Ark had just turned against them. It was no longer just a tool for humanity's survival. It had become a deadly weapon in the hands of the alien force. Suddenly, the ground shook violently. The walls of the Ark's control room began to crack, and massive metallic tendrils shot up from the floor, reaching toward the team. The Ark itself seemed to be transforming before their eyes, shifting into a shape that was almost organic, like something that was both machine and living creature. The tendrils whipped out, smashing into the walls with a deafening crash, as if the Ark were trying to fight them off. "We need to get to the core," Dr. Mercer shouted over the noise, pointing toward a massive elevator shaft at the far side of the room. "It's our only chance to stop this." But as they moved toward the elevator, more tendrils shot from the walls, blocking their path. Shaw and his team fought back, firing their weapons at the advancing metal limbs. But for every tendril they destroyed, two more seemed to replace it. The Ark was fighting back, and it was more powerful than they could have ever imagined. Shaw's expression darkened. The aliens had been watching, monitoring every movement on Earth. If they suspected humanity had something capable of turning the tide, they wouldn't wait long before trying to seize it. And yet there was no time to waste. "Prepare a team," he ordered. "We're going after the Ark." The decision was made. Shaw's team would embark on a daring mission to locate and activate the Ark, with no idea of what they would face inside, and no guarantees that the technology could even be used in time. The team braced themselves for what would likely be a one-way trip. They gathered their weapons, secured their equipment, and prepared to leave the relative safety of the bunker. The clock was ticking, and the alien fleet was still hovering, waiting. They had to move now. As Shaw and his team traveled through the ruined cities, the silence that hung in the air was almost suffocating. The streets, once filled with life, were now empty, littered with the remains of a world that had been torn apart. The only sounds were the crunch of rubble beneath their boots and the distant hum of alien ships overhead. It was clear that the aliens were still watching, but where were they? Why weren't they attacking? When they reached the entrance to the Ark's hidden facility, they found it heavily guarded by the very aliens they had been fighting against. Somehow, the aliens had anticipated their move. They knew about the Ark. They knew that humanity was searching for it. A massive alien sentinel stood in their way, its glowing red eyes scanning the area for any sign of movement. The team froze, trying not to make a sound. The alien was large, at least 10 feet tall, with a massive arm cannon built into its chest. It was an advanced form of alien soldier, one that seemed almost designed to kill. "Stay low," Shaw whispered. He motioned to his team to move behind the rocks and debris scattered around the facility's entrance. They were so close to the Ark, just a few hundred meters away, but the alien sentry was blocking their path. It scanned the area for what felt like an eternity, its mechanical gaze sweeping from left to right, its movements deliberate and precise. The team held their breath, praying they wouldn't be spotted. Then, as if the universe itself had decided to give them a break, a loud explosion erupted in the distance. The sentry turned toward the noise, momentarily distracted. It was enough. Shaw signaled to his team, and they moved swiftly, using the chaos to close the distance between them and the Ark's entrance. They were inside. But as soon as the door to the Ark's control room slid open, they were met with a sight that took their breath away. The Ark wasn't just a weapon. It was a complex, living machine. Alien technology blended with human ingenuity, creating a system that pulsed with strange energy. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. The walls seemed to breathe, and the air was thick with a low hum, as though the Ark itself was alive, waiting for something, or someone, to awaken it. "We need to power it up," Dr. Mercer said, her eyes wide with awe and fear. "If we can get the central core online, it might give us control over their systems." But as they approached the control panel, something unexpected happened. The Ark systems came online on their own, as though it recognized them, or perhaps was anticipating their arrival. Suddenly, a deep voice boomed from the speakers, alien yet familiar. "You have come too late. The war ends with your extinction." The words were cold, final. The aliens knew what humanity was up to. And now, the real battle was about to begin. Shaw's heart raced. The Ark had activated on its own, but was it on their side, or the aliens? The team prepared for the worst. They had no idea what would happen next, but one thing was certain: this was no longer just about surviving. This was about saving the future of humanity. And the final test, it was beginning. Just as Shaw was about to speak, the massive door to the command room slammed open, and a young officer hurried in, breathless. "Sir, you need to see this." The officer led Shaw and Dr. Mercer to the main observation deck, where the view of the sky was visible through large, reinforced windows. The massive alien ships still hovered overhead, but now something was different. They were shifting, moving slowly, as if repositioning themselves for something greater. It was then that Shaw realized this wasn't the calm before the storm. This was the beginning of the end. "We need to prepare," Shaw said, his voice steady but filled with a sense of urgency. "We don't have much time. Whatever they're planning, it's coming, and we need to be ready." Dr. Mercer nodded, her mind already racing with ideas. "We've been studying their technology. We've reverse-engineered some of their weapons, but we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of their capabilities. If they're planning something bigger, we need to figure out what it is, and fast." Just as the group was about to mobilize, the lights flickered once more, and the room fell into darkness. A deep, resonating hum vibrated through the walls of the bunker, and a voice not human, sounded from the loudspeakers. It wasn't a message, it was an order. "The war will end soon. The final test will begin." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. The test was coming, and humanity would be its final target. Shaw felt the weight of the moment press down on him, but he refused to show fear. The survival of humanity now depended on one simple truth. They had no choice but to fight. The aliens might have been waiting for something, but now, Earth was ready. The stage was set. The countdown had begun, and in the shadows of the unknown, humanity's final stand was about to begin. The silence that had consumed Earth for days now felt like an ominous warning. Humanity had only a brief reprieve before the inevitable storm. The alien fleet was still there, hovering just beyond Earth's atmosphere. Their ships were enormous, dark silhouettes against the backdrop of space, and their weapons had already reduced entire cities to nothing more than ash and rubble. But why hadn't they attacked? The pause in the war only heightened the tension. People on the ground wondered if it was just a matter of time before the aliens unleashed their full force, or if something even worse was coming. Major Richard Shaw gathered his team in the underground command center. Their resources were dwindling, and humanity's resolve was starting to weaken. Despite their best efforts to prepare, the survivors knew they were running out of time. Shaw's mind was racing. The cryptic alien message they had intercepted still echoed in his thoughts. The final test will begin. What did they mean by that? Shaw muttered to himself as he looked over the holographic map of Earth. He was no longer just thinking about survival. He was thinking about how to end this war once and for all. He had to find a way to turn the tide, or else Earth wouldn't last another month. Dr. Elena Mercer, the scientist who had been tirelessly working on understanding the alien technology, was already at the data terminal, scrolling through endless streams of alien communication and system readings. The team had been trying to reverse engineer alien weaponry, but it was a slow process. Despite their progress, they knew that nothing they had was even close to matching the alien fleet's power. The Ark, humanity's last hope, was hidden somewhere, but where? Dr. Mercer turned to Shaw with a grim expression. "I think I've found something," she said, her voice low but urgent. "We've been looking at their weapons, their ships, trying to figure out how to counter them. But there's something else we've missed. The Ark. It's not just a weapon. It's a technology that connects to something far larger than we anticipated. It's the key to defeating them." The mention of the Ark caused a ripple of unease in the room. The Ark was humanity's most guarded secret, a facility buried deep underground, rumored to contain technology so advanced it was nearly incomprehensible. It was a backup plan created in the event of an alien invasion, but no one really knew how it worked. All they had were fragments of old research and scattered blueprints. Shaw's eyes narrowed as he considered Dr. Mercer's words. The Ark could hold the answers they needed, but they had no idea how to activate it or what its true purpose was. "Can we use it?" he asked, his voice laced with both hope and doubt. "Can it stop them?" Dr. Mercer hesitated. "We need to access its core systems, but it's buried beneath miles of reinforced rock, and we're not the only ones looking for it." The world had fallen into an eerie stillness, a silence that was as unsettling as it was profound. Just days before, Earth had been under attack from an alien force so powerful that humanity had no choice but to watch as cities crumbled and skies darkened with the shadows of massive ships. The invaders had come with an overwhelming force, ships that seemed to stretch beyond the horizon, weapons capable of destroying entire cities in a single blast. For months, the human race had fought back with everything they had, but nothing worked. Humanity was losing the war. Yet, without warning, everything stopped. The alien ships ceased their bombardment, their massive forms frozen in the sky like statues. The silence was deafening. No explosions, no radio signals from the military, no sirens blaring in the streets. It was as if the entire planet had been suspended in time, trapped in a moment of anticipation. For a brief, fleeting second, the survivors dared to hope. Perhaps the aliens had decided to withdraw. Maybe they had achieved their objective and were preparing to leave. But deep down, they knew it was too good to be true. This was a trick, a pause before the final strike. In the remains of what was once New York City, a group of military commanders and scientists gathered in a hidden underground bunker. The city's skyline was reduced to ruins, towering buildings now nothing more than piles of rubble. But the human spirit had not yet been broken. Though the world was fractured, there was still hope, even if faint. In this bunker, the survivors had been working tirelessly to understand the alien technology and figure out how they could fight back. They had no choice but to act. The truth was clear. The aliens had come to conquer Earth. They weren't here for diplomacy, and they weren't here to negotiate. They were here to wipe out humanity. But now, the aliens were waiting. Something was wrong, and the military leaders and scientists could feel it in their bones. It was as if the aliens were playing a game, studying their every move, and giving humanity just enough hope to keep them alive. Major Richard Shaw, the leader of the human resistance, stood at the center of the bunker. His face was tired, the weight of command etched deeply into his features. He had seen the destruction. He had seen the death. His own family was gone, wiped out in the initial wave of the invasion. Now all he had left was the mission. "They're waiting for something," Shaw muttered to himself. But what? His thoughts were interrupted by the screen in front of him flickering to life. A signal had come through, a cryptic message, broadcast in a strange language that they couldn't decipher. The tone was chilling, mechanical, but undeniably alive. They had intercepted similar messages before, but this one was different. It was as if the aliens were taunting them, preparing for something far worse. Dr. Elena Mercer, a top scientist who had been studying the alien technology since the invasion began, was at the console, analyzing the message. "It's not a threat," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's a warning." "A warning?" Shaw repeated, leaning in. "From who?" "The aliens," she replied, staring at the screen, her fingers typing in rapid succession. "They know we're still alive. They know we've been adapting. But they want us to know something. Something they've been hiding." The words on the screen shifted, changing in a way that was impossible to understand. But then there was a strange symbol that appeared, one that was unmistakably familiar. It was a symbol that had been found on the wreckage of the first alien ship to land on Earth, the one that had been discovered weeks before the invasion began. "They've been watching us longer than we thought," Dr. Mercer said, her voice filled with both awe and dread. "They know our weaknesses. But this message, it's something more. It's like they're telling us we're not ready yet. They've been waiting for the right moment." Shaw's mind raced. What could they possibly be waiting for? The human resistance had been on the brink of collapse, and yet the aliens hadn't made their final move. They had waited for too long. Shaw's instincts told him that something was coming, something catastrophic. The aliens had paused, yes, but for how long? And more importantly, why?